Astrid Lindholm sat alone in her seaside mansion, gazing out the large windows where the waves softly lapped against the shore, the stillness of the ocean mirroring her calm mind. At 60 years old, she was a woman who had built a successful financial and real estate empire. But despite her wealth, Astrid had never felt complete. She had spent her entire life building a career after the death of her husband, and now, in the quiet of her later years, she lived alone, her only focus the care of her family. Her only child, Sophia, was the light of her life. Astrid had poured all of her love and care into raising her, always hoping that the love she gave would be enough. Yet over the years, their relationship had become strained. Sophia, intelligent and full of potential, was also deeply insecure. She had always sought validation from her mother, feeling as though she had never been truly understood or loved in the way she longed for. And then there was Magnus, the man Sophia married. He appeared perfect, polished, well-spoken, and confident. He was everything any mother could hope for in a son-in-law, or so it seemed. But as time passed, Astrid began to notice the cracks in Magnus's facade. Though charming on the surface, he was often distant, busy with work or distracted by his own ambitions. He had a way of keeping Sophia's attention focused solely on him, making her feel as though he was the only person who mattered. And Astrid, though she respected him, couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. Sophia, still deeply in love with her husband, refused to see the growing distance between them. She believed in the facade, trusted Magnus's words, and always justified his actions. But Astrid could see the tension in Sophia's eyes when she spoke of her husband. Their marriage, despite its outward appearance, was not what it seemed. Astrid, despite her concerns, did everything she could to support her daughter, thinking that family was the most important thing. She didn't want to believe that her own daughter could be blinded by a man who might not truly care for her, but she had always been there for Sophia, and she intended to stay that way. One day, while sitting at her kitchen table, sipping on tea and gazing out at the sea, her phone rang. It was Sophia. "Mom, we've found the perfect house," Sophia said, her voice laced with hope. "But we're a little short on the down payment. Can you help us out?" Astrid felt a brief flicker of surprise but quickly dismissed it. This was her daughter, after all. She had raised her to be strong, to make her own way, but sometimes a little help was needed. And what mother wouldn't want to see her daughter happy? "How much do you need, sweetheart?" Astrid asked, already reaching for her checkbook. $80,000, Mom. Just a little more and we can make it happen," Sophia replied. Astrid felt a pang of warmth in her chest. The thought of Sophia having a beautiful home of her own brought a smile to her face. "Of course, dear, I'll take care of it." With a simple stroke of the pen, Astrid wrote the check and handed over the money without hesitation. She didn't think twice. It was for family, after all. As she signed the check, she felt a rush of relief, knowing that she was helping Sophia build a future. But little did she know, this gesture of love and support would mark the beginning of a betrayal she never saw coming. The days that followed felt like a dream to Sophia. She could finally see herself and Magnus in their perfect home, the one they had talked about for so long. Astrid's check had made all the difference, and now the house was within reach. It wasn't just a house, it was a symbol of the life Sophia had always dreamed of. A fresh start, a place where everything would finally fall into place. But even as Sophia clung to the idea of the perfect family life, a nagging sense of unease lingered in the back of her mind. Magnus had been acting distant lately. He no longer showed the same affection he once did. Sophia tried to ignore it, convinced that the stress of buying a new house and moving was getting to him. But deep down, she knew something wasn't right. Still, she pushed those thoughts aside. She had the house now, and nothing else seemed to matter. Astrid, meanwhile, was feeling a mix of excitement and pride. She was happy to help her daughter and thought that, with this gesture, maybe Sophia would finally feel secure enough to stop seeking validation from others. She hoped that this house would bring her daughter the peace and happiness she had always wanted. But that optimism began to fade when, a few weeks later, Sophia called again. "Mom, we need to talk," Sophia said, her voice tense like she was holding something back. Astrid frowned, sensing that something was wrong. "What's going on, sweetheart?" Sophia hesitated for a moment, as though she wasn't sure how to say it. Finally, she let out a long sigh. "I know we said everything was fine, but, well, Magnus doesn't want you coming to the family trip in Iceland. He wants only his family there." Astrid's heart sank. The words felt like a slap to the face, even though she wasn't sure why. She had helped them get the house, been there for every moment of their struggle, yet now, she was being shut out of something that should have been a celebration of family. It wasn't the first time she'd felt this coldness from them, but something about the way Sophia phrased it made her realize that her daughter had distanced herself, not just from her mother, but from everything Astrid had ever done for her. "Wait, what do you mean his family?" Astrid asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "His family, Mom. His parents, his siblings, it's just a family thing. I'm sorry, it's just the way it is," Sophia responded, her voice distant and apologetic, but not truly remorseful. The phone call ended with Astrid's stomach twisted in knots. She sat there in silence for a moment, the weight of those words pressing down on her. His family, the phrase echoed in her mind. She had given them so much, and now she was being cast aside like an outsider. For the first time, Astrid felt the full sting of being replaced, of being made to feel as though she didn't belong. And yet, she couldn't bring herself to call Sophia out. Instead, she buried her pain, trying to convince herself that this was just a misunderstanding, that Sophia was simply trying to keep the peace with her husband. The next few days were filled with quiet tension as Astrid tried to carry on with her usual routine. She had planned to get ready for the trip, to pack and feel like she was part of the family vacation. But now, there was no trip. There was nothing but the crushing realization that, despite all the sacrifices she had made, she was no longer wanted. As the days passed, Sophia's silence became louder, and Astrid's unease grew. Was this how it was going to be from now on? Were the years of sacrifice and love just nothing but a distant memory? It wasn't until later, when Astrid decided to take matters into her own hands, that the truth would begin to unravel. Astrid sat at the kitchen table, staring at the untouched cup of coffee in front of her. The morning sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting a soft glow across the room, but nothing could pierce the fog of confusion and hurt that clouded her mind. The phone call from Sophia still echoed in her head, and the more she thought about it, the more it felt like a betrayal. She had always put her family first, but now it felt like she was being discarded, like an afterthought. For days, she tried to convince herself that she was overreacting, that maybe Sophia was just caught up in her own life, with the stress of the new house and all the changes. But deep down, Astrid knew something was wrong. Sophia's coldness wasn't an accident. It was intentional. And the exclusion from the trip, it was just the beginning. Astrid's mind was racing, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she had been played. She had given Sophia and Magnus $80,000 to help them buy the house, plus hundreds of thousands more in monthly mortgage payments. And for what? To be told she wasn't family enough to join a trip she had helped fund. Her thoughts spiraled, and the hurt deepened. Where had the money gone? What were they spending it on? A sudden wave of suspicion washed over her. She needed answers, not just for the sake of her emotions, but for the integrity of the financial help she had so generously offered. With a resolve that surprised even her, Astrid decided to take matters into her own hands. She picked up the phone and called the mortgage company. Hello, this is Astrid Lindholm. I need to inquire about my payments for the Henderson account, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos inside. After a few moments of hold music, the receptionist returned. Mrs. Lindholm, I'm happy to assist you. How can I help? I've been making monthly mortgage payments for the past several months, Astrid began, but I want to confirm the current status of the account. Could you tell me if there are any issues? There was a pause before the voice on the other end spoke again. Actually, Mrs. Lindholm, I see here that the payments have been coming in, but it appears there's been a shortfall of $1,000 each month. You've been contributing $3,200, but the actual mortgage is $4,200. The account is 3 months behind despite your contributions. Astrid's heart dropped. 3 months behind. She had been sending payments faithfully, convinced she was helping her daughter build a stable future. But now, it seemed like that money had been mismanaged. Or worse, used for something else. Excuse me, Astrid said, her voice trembling for the first time. I've been paying $3,200 every month. How could there be a shortfall? I'm not entirely sure, Mrs. Lindholm. It's possible that the remaining balance wasn't covered by the borrowers. But without your full contribution, the property could be at risk of foreclosure soon. The words foreclosure and risk hit Astrid like a ton of bricks. She had thought that Sophia and Magnus were struggling to make ends meet. But this was something else entirely. Astrid's mind started piecing together the fragments. The BMW Magnus had recently bought, the designer clothes Sophia had been flaunting on social media. None of it added up. How could they afford all of this if they were behind on their mortgage? Astrid's thoughts were interrupted as the voice on the phone continued. If you'd like, we can stop all future payments from your account immediately, though you should know this could accelerate foreclosure proceedings. Astrid's breath caught in her throat. The situation was unraveling quickly, and she knew she had to act fast. No, she replied, her voice firm. Cancel the payments immediately. Let them deal with the consequences. After hanging up the phone, Astrid sat there, staring at the space in front of her. Her emotions were a whirlwind of hurt, confusion, and anger. The people she had trusted the most, her daughter and son-in-law, had been lying to her. They had used her generosity to fuel their own selfish desires, and now they were putting everything at risk. But it wasn't just the money that hurt. It was the realization that Sophia had been living a lie. Had she really thought her mother wouldn't notice? Determined to get to the bottom of it, Astrid picked up the phone again. This time, she called David, her neighbor's son, a real estate lawyer she had come to trust over the years. David, she said, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. I need your help. I want to know everything about the property at 1247 Elmwood Drive. I need to know the truth. David was immediately willing to help, though he cautioned, Astrid, you should be careful. If this goes too far, it could ruin your relationship with your daughter. I'm not worried about that anymore, Astrid replied. I just want to know where my money went. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight broke through the curtains, Astrid sat at her kitchen table with a notebook in front of her. She had barely slept, her mind racing with thoughts of the previous day's revelations. The phone call from the mortgage company had shaken her to the core, but what was worse was the realization that her daughter and son-in-law had lied to her for months, hiding the truth of their financial struggles. Just as she began to process the new information, her phone rang. It was David, the real estate lawyer. His voice was steady, but she could hear the concern underneath. Astrid, I've got the property records for 1247 Elmwood Drive, David said. And it's not good. They've been lying to you about the down payment. Astrid's heart skipped a beat. She had expected some bad news, but this. What do you mean? She asked, her voice tense. The house was purchased for $600,000, but they only told you they needed $80,000 for the down payment. The actual down payment was $120,000, and on top of that, they've taken out a second mortgage for $40,000. That's why they're behind on payments, because they've been borrowing more than they've been telling you. Astrid's mind reeled. Not only had they misrepresented the amount of money they needed, but they'd also taken on additional debt without her knowledge. She had helped them buy a home, yet now it felt like she had been part of their scam. What are they using that extra money for? Astrid asked, her voice barely above a whisper. David hesitated for a moment, then replied, "Based on the photos I've seen on social media, I'd say they've been using it for luxury purchases, new cars, designer furniture, and other unnecessary expenses. They're living beyond their means, and you've been the one footing the bill." Astrid felt a sharp pain in her chest. Her entire life, she had worked hard to build financial security, and yet she had allowed herself to be taken advantage of by the very people she loved the most. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the betrayal, the manipulation, and the lies. "David, I need to do something about this," she said, her voice firm with resolve. "I want to buy that house." There was a brief silence on the other end before David responded. "Are you sure about this? If you buy it, they'll lose everything. You'll be taking away their dream home." "I'm not trying to take anything away from them," Astrid replied, her voice steady. "But I've worked too hard for my money to let them squander it. They need to face the consequences of their actions. I'm done being the bank." David sighed, understanding the gravity of the situation. "All right, I'll start preparing the paperwork. We'll need to move fast, though. Once those missed payments hit the account, foreclosure proceedings will begin, and you'll need to act before someone else does." Later that afternoon, Astrid sat in her living room, pacing as she waited for Sophia to arrive. She had called her daughter earlier, asking for a meeting. Sophia hadn't responded immediately, but Astrid was certain she'd show up. Despite everything, Sophia was still her daughter. Astrid just wasn't sure how much longer that would be true after what she was about to do. The doorbell rang, and Astrid's heart skipped a beat. She composed herself, straightened her blouse, and walked to the door. Sophia stood on the other side, her face tight with an unreadable expression. She had that look, the one that suggested she knew something was off but wasn't yet ready to confront it. Astrid stepped aside to let her in. "Mom, what's going on? You said you wanted to talk," Sophia said, her tone a mix of concern and confusion. Astrid motioned for Sophia to sit down, her mind sharp and clear despite the storm of emotions threatening to break free. "I need to understand, Sophia," she began, her voice steady but cold. "I've been helping you and Magnus with the house, and yet I find out you've been lying to me." Sophia's eyes widened in shock. "What are you talking about?" she stammered. "Lying to you? I haven't lied to you." Astrid sat down across from her, leaning in slightly. "You've been telling me one thing while doing another. The mortgage isn't what you said it was. The down payment wasn't $80,000. It was $120,000. And on top of that, you've taken out an additional loan without telling me." Sophia's face paled as the words sank in. "Mom, you didn't think I would find out, did you?" Astrid interrupted, her voice growing more pointed. "I've been paying the mortgage month after month, but you've been using that money for things I never agreed to. Cars, furniture, vacations. You've been living a life I didn't approve of, using my money to fund it all." Sophia's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She looked defeated, her shoulders sagging as the weight of her lies came crashing down on her. "I trusted you," Astrid said, her voice trembling with barely contained anger. "And this is how you repay me, by turning my love into a transaction." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "Mom, I didn't know what else to do. Magnus said we needed to live like this to keep up appearances. He said we could pay you back later. Once things settled down, I thought you'd understand." Astrid shook her head, her heart breaking. This wasn't about appearances, Sophia. This was about trust, and you've destroyed that. Sophia reached out, her voice breaking. I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't mean for it to get this far. I thought you wouldn't notice, that you wouldn't care. I was wrong. Astrid took a deep breath, trying to calm the rage that surged through her. It's too late for apologies, Sophia. I've already made my decision. Sophia looked up, eyes wide with fear. What do you mean? I'm buying the house, Astrid said, her voice icy. You and Magnus will lose it. You'll face the consequences of your actions. I'm done being your ATM. Sophia's face crumpled. No, Mom, please don't do this. You should have thought about that before you lied to me for months, Astrid said, standing up. It's over, Sophia. The game is over. The atmosphere in the room was thick with silence after Astrid's words. Sophia's tear-filled eyes searched her mother's face, a mixture of desperation and guilt clouding her expression. She couldn't comprehend what was happening. Her mother, the woman who had always supported her unconditionally, was now poised to destroy everything they had built. The house, the life she had dreamed of, it was all slipping through her fingers. Sophia, I don't want to do this, but you've left me no choice, Astrid said, her voice cold but resolute. You've lied to me. You've taken advantage of my love, and now you'll face the consequences. Sophia opened her mouth to protest, but no words came out. The truth had caught up with her, and she knew that nothing she could say would change it now. Please, Mom, I'm begging you, Sophia whispered, her voice breaking. Don't take the house away. We'll fix this. I'll work harder. I'll do anything. Just, please don't make us lose everything. Astrid paused for a moment, her heart softening slightly at the sight of her daughter's anguish, but she couldn't allow herself to be swayed by guilt. This was bigger than her love for Sophia. It was about the respect she had given so freely and the betrayal she had endured. I gave you everything, Sophia, Astrid said, her tone softening just enough for her daughter to hear the pain beneath the anger. I helped you get that house. I've given you money when you needed it, but you've been lying to me all along, and I'm done enabling this behavior. You need to learn that actions have consequences. Sophia fell silent, her shoulders shaking as she sobbed quietly. Astrid turned away, walking toward the window and looking out at the ocean. The house, the family, everything she had fought for in her life, it all felt so fragile now. She had given everything for them, and in return they had betrayed her trust. But she wasn't going to let it continue. She had made her decision, and there was no turning back. Over the next few days, Astrid took the necessary steps to solidify her plan. She met with David, the lawyer, who had already started preparing the paperwork to purchase the house from under Sophia and Magnus. The moment the mortgage payment was missed, the process of foreclosure would begin, but Astrid was determined to act quickly, before anyone else could make a move. David sat across from her at the kitchen table, a stack of papers between them. His expression was serious, but Astrid could sense the underlying respect he had for her decision. He had been with her through the entire process, watching her struggle with the pain of betrayal. Now he saw the woman who had been wronged, taking control of her future. Astrid, this is the moment you've been waiting for, David said, sliding a document toward her. Once you sign this, the house is yours. The foreclosure will be swift, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. Astrid looked at the paper for a moment before signing her name with a sharp, deliberate stroke. It was over. The house was now in her hands. Sophia and Magnus would lose everything they had built, and it was a bitter victory. But Astrid knew it was the only way to teach them a lesson. Do they know? Astrid asked, her voice steady. Not yet, David replied. But they will. Once the foreclosure papers are filed, they'll have no choice but to face the truth. Astrid nodded, a mixture of anger and sadness swirling inside her. She knew this would change everything between her and her daughter. She had tried to protect Sophia for so long, but now it was time for her daughter to learn the consequences of her actions. The confrontation with Sophia had been difficult, but the hardest part was yet to come. Astrid knew that, once the truth was out, her relationship with her daughter would never be the same. And she was prepared for the fallout, even if it meant sacrificing the closeness they had once shared. The next morning, as the papers were filed and the house was officially in her name, Astrid waited for the inevitable call. It came mid-afternoon, just as she was tending to her garden. Her phone buzzed on the table, and she knew exactly who it was before she even looked. "Sophia," Astrid said quietly, answering the call with a calm that surprised even herself. "Mom, what's happening?" Sophia's voice was frantic, her words tumbling over each other. "Why are they taking the house away? We've been paying the mortgage. What's going on?" Astrid took a deep breath, preparing herself for the emotional storm on the other end of the line. "Sophia, I'm not going to keep covering for you. You lied to me. You've been using my money for your own luxury, and I won't stand by and watch you destroy yourself and your family." "Mom, no. No, please, I'm sorry. Please don't do this. You can't take everything from us." Sophia's voice cracked, and Astrid could hear the panic rising in her daughter's words. "I didn't take anything from you, Sophia," Astrid replied, her voice firm. "You took from me. You took my trust, my love, and you used it to fund your own selfish desires. Now you'll have to deal with the consequences." Sophia was silent for a long moment, the weight of Astrid's words sinking in. "Please, Mom, we'll fix it. I'll pay you back. Just give us a chance." Astrid felt the bitterness rise in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. "No, it's too late for that. You've had your chance." In the days that followed, the fallout from Astrid's decision spread like wildfire. Sophia and Magnus fought desperately to keep the house, but with the foreclosure proceedings already in motion, they had no leverage. Sophia, devastated, turned to her lawyer, but there was little they could do. The house was now officially Astrid's. As the dust settled, Astrid moved into the house, making it her own. She spent her days tending to the garden, enjoying the peace that came with knowing she had made the right choice, no matter how painful it had been. Sophia and Magnus were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. In the quiet moments, Astrid thought about the future. Would Sophia ever forgive her? Would they ever rebuild their relationship? Only time would tell. But for now, Astrid had regained control of her life, and that was enough. The days following the finalization of the foreclosure were a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and quiet moments of reflection. Astrid had always been a woman of action, but as she sat in the large, empty living room of her new home, the weight of what she had done began to settle on her shoulders. She had won. Her house was now hers, but at what cost? Sophia had tried to contact her several times after that phone call, but Astrid couldn't bring herself to pick up. What was there to say? The truth had been laid bare between them, and there was no going back. Every apology Sophia had offered had come too late, and while Astrid still loved her daughter, she couldn't allow her emotional attachment to cloud the lessons that needed to be learned. Astrid's phone buzzed again, and this time she decided to answer. It was David. "Astrid, I need to speak with you." David's voice was urgent, a change from his usual calm demeanor. "You won't believe what I've found." Astrid felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She sat up straighter. "What's going on?" "There's been some activity with Magnus," David continued. "I've had a few people looking into their finances, and it's worse than I thought. It's not just the mortgage manipulation. There's something far bigger at play here." "What do you mean?" Astrid asked, trying to keep her voice steady. She wasn't sure if she was ready for more shocking news, but she knew she had to face it head-on. David paused before speaking again. "Magnus has been using fake identities and fraudulent paperwork to secure loans. He's been hiding assets for months, if not years. And there's more. It looks like he's been laundering money through a network of offshore accounts. He's been siphoning off large sums from the property, from investments, everything you helped finance." Astrid felt her breath catch. This was no longer just a matter of betrayal, this was financial crime. The man Sophia had married, the man she had trusted, had been a criminal all along. "I don't know how you didn't see it sooner," David added, his tone shifting. "But it's clear now that Magnus was using Sophia as a pawn in a much bigger game. He wanted to secure his position, use her money, your money, to cover up his tracks." Astrid could barely process the information. Magnus wasn't just irresponsible, he was a criminal, and Sophia had been dragged into his mess without realizing the full extent of it. "I need to know what you want to do next," David said, pulling her back into the present. "You can either let the police handle it, or you can take a more proactive approach. I've been gathering evidence for a potential case, but it's going to be a hard fight. Magnus has connections." Astrid stood up, pacing the room as she thought. She had already made the decision to protect her family and her money. But this was a different level. This wasn't just about getting her house back. This was about justice, about making sure Magnus faced the consequences of his actions, not just for what he'd done to her, but for what he'd done to Sophia as well. "I'll handle it," Astrid said, her voice firm. "I want him exposed. I want everyone to know the truth. If Sophia has to face the consequences of her choices, so be it. But Magnus, he needs to pay for what he's done." David agreed, and with that they began to formulate a plan. They would gather all the evidence, bank records, fraudulent loans, everything Magnus had used to build his false empire, and then they would take it to the authorities. The next week, Sophia finally came to see her mother. It was the first time since their last confrontation, and Astrid knew that things had reached a breaking point. Sophia knocked on the door hesitantly, and when Astrid opened it, she was met with a version of her daughter she didn't recognize. Sophia's eyes were red from crying, her face pale. She was a woman broken, though still clinging to some hope that she could somehow fix things. "I've been talking to Magnus," Sophia said quietly as she entered. And he's telling me it's not as bad as you think. He says it's all going to be okay. He said we can work everything out." Astrid's heart sank. Sophia was still in denial, but now she had to break the last remaining illusion. "No, Sophia, it's not okay," Astrid said, her voice firm but compassionate. "Magnus is a liar, a manipulator. I've seen everything. The money he's stolen, the lies he's built his life on. You need to understand he has been using you, and he's been using me." Sophia recoiled, her face flushing with disbelief. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I know things haven't been perfect, but this is too much. You're telling me that everything we've built is a lie." Astrid nodded slowly, her heart aching for the daughter she still loved but couldn't protect. "Yes, Sophia, I've found out everything. The loans, the fake identities, the offshore accounts. Magnus has been laundering money, and you've been a part of it. Not because you wanted to be, but because you trusted the wrong person." Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes as the truth crashed down on her. She sank onto the couch, her hands trembling. "How could I have been so blind? How could I have let him do this to me?" "You were never blind, Sophia. You were just trying to protect what you thought was your family. But now, you have to face the truth. Magnus doesn't care about you. He only cares about himself." Sophia sat in stunned silence, the weight of her mistakes slowly sinking in. The guilt was overwhelming, but Astrid knew that this moment, painful as it was the first step toward recovery, for both of them. "Do you understand now, Sophia?" Astrid asked, her voice soft but firm. "This isn't just about the house. This is about your future. You have to make a choice. You can't keep living in this lie." Sophia nodded, her face filled with grief and shame. "I don't know what to do anymore. I feel so lost." "I'll help you," Astrid said, sitting down beside her daughter. "But you have to be strong enough to face what's ahead, and we'll do it together." Months had passed since that fateful conversation, and life for Astrid had gradually found a new rhythm. The house, once a symbol of betrayal, had become her sanctuary. It was a place where she had reclaimed her life, her finances, and most importantly, her sense of self-worth. She had made the hard decision to stand up for herself, and although it had torn apart her relationship with her daughter, she didn't regret it. Sophia had begun the painful process of picking up the pieces of her shattered life. With Astrid's help, she faced the legal battles ahead, though the road was long and fraught with difficulty. She had made the choice to distance herself from Magnus, who had been arrested for his fraudulent activities. The truth about his manipulation, theft, and lies had been exposed, and Sophia had been forced to confront the ugly reality of the man she had once loved. But the damage was done. Sophia had been left to rebuild her life, and though Astrid helped, she knew that healing would take time. Their relationship was in tatters, and no amount of apologies or well-meaning gestures could fix what had been broken. Yet, there was a small part of Astrid that believed Sophia could still find her way, could still find redemption in her own life, just as Astrid had found strength through adversity. One evening, as Astrid was sitting in the living room of her new home, watching the sunset over the ocean, the phone rang. It was Sophia. Astrid hesitated for a moment, her finger hovering over the screen. She had been avoiding her for months, knowing that the hurt was still too raw. But this time, something felt different. She answered the call, bracing herself for the conversation ahead. "Hi, Mom." Sophia's voice was quieter than usual, filled with a vulnerability Astrid hadn't heard in a long time. I wanted to talk. Can we meet?" Astrid's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't the usual defensive tone she had come to expect. Sophia sounded sorry. For the first time in months, Astrid felt a flicker of hope. "Of course," Astrid said, her voice calm, though she could feel the weight of everything still hanging between them. "When? How about tomorrow? I'll come to your house," Sophia suggested. The next day, Astrid waited for Sophia at the table where they had once shared so many meals. When Sophia finally arrived, she looked tired, worn down by the trials of the past months, but there was something else in her eyes, a glimmer of understanding, a hint of maturity that hadn't been there before. "I'm so sorry, Mom," Sophia said, her voice thick with emotion as she sat down across from her mother. "I've spent so many nights thinking about everything, and I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know. I was blind, and I hurt you, and I can never undo that. But I've learned so much from all of this, and I know I need to change." Astrid looked at her daughter, the woman she had spent so many years nurturing, and a wave of sorrow washed over her. It wasn't the apology she had hoped for, but it was the one she had needed to hear. It was a step forward, a recognition of her mistakes and the consequences they carried. "I'm proud of you for facing the truth, Sophia," Astrid replied, her voice soft but firm. "But forgiveness doesn't come easily, and it's not something you can expect from me overnight. It's going to take time." Sophia nodded, her eyes filled with tears. "I understand. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, Mom, but I want you to know I'm working on it. I'm trying to be better. I've started therapy, and I'm taking responsibility for everything." Astrid didn't speak for a long time, her eyes focused on the horizon beyond the window. The ocean waves were calm now, a stark contrast to the storm that had raged through her life just months ago. Finally, she turned back to Sophia. "Then let's take it one day at a time," Astrid said. "And remember, no matter what happens, I still love you. But you need to rebuild that trust, not just with me, but with yourself." The silence between them was heavy, but not suffocating. It was the kind of silence that signified a beginning, not an end. In the months that followed, things between Astrid and Sophia slowly began to improve. They still had a long way to go, but Sophia had made it clear that she was committed to repairing their bond. And for the first time in a long time, Astrid believed her. The legal battles were not yet over, but Sophia was determined to stand on her own, without the crutch of Magnus or her past mistakes. And though the scars of the betrayal remained, they were no longer a barrier between mother and daughter. Instead, they were reminders of the journey they had taken together, however painful. As for Astrid, she had learned something about herself through this process. She had always thought that love meant giving everything, but now she knew that true love also meant setting boundaries, protecting herself, and standing up for what was right, even when it came at a great personal cost. And so, with her house, her peace of mind, and her family slowly but surely beginning to heal, Astrid could finally look forward to a future where she wasn't defined by her past sacrifices. The chapter of betrayal and loss had ended. It was time to start a new one where she could find balance, peace, and perhaps a second chance at happiness. Epilogue. Years later, as Astrid sat on the porch of her now thriving home, surrounded by the laughter of her grandchildren, she couldn't help but smile. She had made it through the storm. She had faced betrayal, fought for justice, and found her way back to the woman she had always been. Sophia, now a mother herself, had become a part of that future, her relationship with her mother stronger than ever. And while things were never perfect, Astrid knew that the most important thing was that they had learned, grown, and found a new way forward. The house was no longer just a home. It was a symbol of resilience, a testament to the power of love, justice, and the strength of a woman who refused to be taken advantage of. Astrid had reclaimed her life, and in doing so, had given herself and her family the greatest gift of all, the chance to rebuild. In this conclusion, Astrid's journey of emotional justice comes full circle. Her choice to confront the truth and take control of her life not only helps her regain her power, but also opens the door to healing and growth within her family. Despite the pain and the cost, Astrid finds peace, and Sophia, though scarred, begins her own path of redemption. The story ends with hope, and the understanding that true healing takes time and effort, but it is always possible.